the 70s, 80s, and 90s was the best time to be alive. It was the best era for storytellers and songwriters, and their cult classics became the anthems and soundtracks that shaped our lives. After the Telecommunications Act of 1996, the corporate takeover began, starting with the local radio stations, concert venues, and promoters. Soon after, the consolidation of the studios and the media. Within a few decades, these companies had control over everything. The concepts, everything that was written, produced, distributed, and eventually consumed. Albert Einstein once said, "Everything that is great and inspiring is created by the individual who can labor in freedom." As artists, we believe that the free flow of ideas is vital to a strong culture. It is long past time for a new, independent entertainment ecosystem. An ecosystem that is not governed by gatekeepers and the corporations, but rather by those who create and consume it. At Creato, we are building that new ecosystem. A system that will empower filmmakers, musicians, entertainers, and podcasters to freely create and distribute all of their content in one location. A system where they can control their earning potential, protect their intellectual property, and engage directly with and build communities around their loyal fans. As we begin the next phase of development, we are reaching out to you to help us fund this next step. Right now, you can become a founding member of Creato and get a lifetime membership when we launch this year. We would love you to be a part of this, to restore freedom for all artists, including filmmakers, musicians, comedians, writers, producers, podcasters, and things that don't even exist yet. We believe that the future of entertainment will be delivered here on Creato.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. How's it going, everybody? This is the AlphaWarrior Show. I'm your host, Alpha. It is Friday. I know you guys are like, hey, it's been Independence Week. Now we're going to another weekend of some barbecue, pool time. But before we get there, I got a show lined up for you guys today. Bringing back my brother John, spiritualintelligence.com. You're going to hear all about him. You're going to hear about where to find him, where to get more of him. And you guys are going to hear, I had a dream about 2.5 weeks ago, and I knew it was important. And I knew there was only one person that I needed to get it to right away. So I sent it to my brother. And you guys are going to hear that recording tonight. And then you're going to hear John break it down and decode it to me, or for me and for us. And from what I understand is we're going to be pretty wild. So before we do that, let's get to 2 quick ads, you guys. Goldco, protecting your investments with gold and silver made simple. AlphaLikesGold.com. That's right, AlphaLikesGold.com. And then real quick and last on deck, and then we're getting into the good show. One of my favorite people, Mike Lindell. See you guys in 60.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and I'm here to tell you about my new product from MyPillow, towels that actually work. Watch this absorbency test. Here's another towel that we randomly went out and bought. Here's one of my towels with the nice design. I don't know if you can see this, but you could line a swimming pool with this. I mean, this is crazy. Get rid of it. Towels that actually work. What a concept.
I really love the towels. They're really great. They're super absorbent.
I'm interrupting this commercial to let you know we're having the biggest clearance sale ever. Get our 6-piece towel sets for only $29.88 with your promo code. My towel sets are made with proprietary technology and include 2 bath towels, 2 hand towels, and 2 washcloths. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get our 6-piece towel sets. Originally $99.98, then on sale for $49.98. Now we're closing them out for only $29.88 while supplies last. Once they're gone, they're gone. So please order now.
There you guys have it. MyPillow.com, promo code Alpha, AlphaLikesGold.com for Goldco. I'm going to bring the gentleman you guys really want to hear from tonight. John, how you doing, brother? Oh, you're on mute.
Good, man. How are you?
I'm stoked, man. So the last time you came on, and I had shared some dreams with you, like you just left me wowed. Like afterwards, I was like, man, this is awesome. I went and got myself a dream journal. I haven't been as proficient at it as I would like to be. Because when you wake up, man, you're tired.
You're tired.
But on the morning of June 16th, last month, I woke up from a dream, and just to set the stage for everybody, at the time, my 2-year-old, we're on the 3rd day of her fever, so I was not getting good sleep. Like I was dead tired, and I woke up and I was like, this dream is important, and I need to make sure I document it right now with all the details I remember. So ran to the studio, got on the soundboard, hit record. So forgive me when you guys hear this audio and you're like, Alpha, you sound tired. That's because I was.
That's how you know it's legit.
That's how you know it's legit. So John's going to play the recording. We may play it all the way through. He may pause it at a point for us to dive in for a conversation. And I'll populate some images that I have saved up that I found off the interweb to kind of make some of the things that I was saying help a little bit with the visuals. But John, before we get into that, for those that didn't see the last time you had on, don't know who you are, can you just give us a brief description of what you do, what your background is like, and why people need to go and subscribe and follow you?
Sure, man. Well, it's always a pleasure to be on the AlphaWarrior Show. I love you, brother. It's always good. You got such a great audience and a great group of people that follow you, that cheer you on, that just love the things that you're doing. And and I'm one of them. So my background is nuclear physics. I was a Navy vet, 11 years Navy, Persian Gulf War, rescue worker at Ground Zero after 9/11. So I got Gulf War syndrome and 9/11 or Ground Zero cough, and then I got COVID. So sometimes I yawn when I talk, or I get a little scratchy. I don't have a cold. It's just kind of a thing. It's like a tick I have or whatever. So so hopefully we can just bear through it. My throat's a little weird today, but got out of the military around 2000 and had a finance company, a strategy consultancy, dabbled a little into politics, but I always had like this preoccupation with dreams. And I started really going down the rabbit hole. I had some disappointments and some things that I thought were going to happen and didn't happen. And so I shelved dreams for a while, but I really believe that dreams are one of the ways, if not the preeminent way, that the Creator speaks to us. God, the divine creative, whatever you want to call him, I call him God. I believe that he speaks to us through dreams, and I believe that dreams are like a 0 day, which for a programmer is a backdoor in any program. It's like a 0 day to humans. I believe that stream is a pure stream, that it flows from the divine to us. Really doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not. God made you, whether you believe that or not. I don't really care what the thoughts are. The fact of the matter is it works. And the more and more that I pay attention to dreams, the more we see some mind-blowing stuff. Probably about 2 or 3 years ago, I started looking at dreams like, what if God really wants to tell us something, and it's extra knowledge outside of the realm of a human being, like things that would happen in the future that nobody could in any way predict. And so we started calling dreams spiritual intelligence, because I wanted there to be a separation between typical dream interpretation and the way that we do it. And so we started looking at dreams like it was a coded message from somewhere. Every word's important, every symbol's important, and really digging into it, which led me on one dossier I put together. Took 32 days full time, doing nothing but working on 3 dreams that somebody could tell you in about 15 minutes. 37 pages long, 31 hyperlinked cross-reference articles of things that came to pass. And one of the things that's interesting is it predicted January 6th. What it predicted was the political play of what Pence did on January 6th, and in comparison to the election of 1800 and the play that Thomas Jefferson did. And I had no idea. I had to look all this stuff up. I just started hearing things. And so I just want to say, when I do a dream, when Alpha shares a dream with me, this isn't word association. These aren't my thoughts. This isn't psychobabble. Like, I really don't care what my opinion is. What I try to do, and whether you believe it or not, it works. So if you're a doubter, hey, that's fine. Got a lot of greats for that too, because I was for a lot of years. Is I just try to get quiet, kind of thoughtfully listen. And a lot of times I'll hear things in my spirit or in my mind. And there are things that I normally wouldn't necessarily equate to a particular word or a particular phrase. And then as I begin to look at that, I see that there's like a subtext or another story underneath that's the interpretation. And then after you've done this for years and years, you kind of get good at understanding what we call the figurative language, which is what dreams are.
It's amazing. That's what it is. And the one thing, and hopefully the audience takes away this, is, before I go to bed, and like I said, I'm not batting 100, you guys, but I am trying my best. Before my eyes close, I'm like, God, if there's a message I need to hear, please help me to understand it and remember it, tonight. Speak to me in my dreams, because that's where it's coming from, and I really feel like that has been helping me. And I feel like I've been able to hone it a little bit better. And even, earlier today when I was listening to the recording of the dream, it's interesting. And I wanted to ask you this question afterwards, but I'll start at the beginning just because I don't want to forget. If I think back to a high school memory, in my mind, I'm remembering a football game that I actually played in. Like, my mind goes to these visuals that were real. Like, I really experienced that. Now, what was just mind-boggling me earlier today is I'm listening to the audio of the dream, and I can see the visual from my dream. So this is where I jacked myself up, John, because I'm like, wait, but this is a dream. Like, this didn't really happen. How can I see this again? And I was like, there's only one man to ask. John, am I making myself go crazy?
No, man. The dream world is so ridiculously misunderstood by most people. And I feel like I've just barely in front of a door that's been cracked open. I'm not even in the room yet. But we have a group of people that have dedicated a whole lot of time into trying to hear the intelligence that comes from dreams. And you and I have talked about this, but for those that may be listening and don't know, we've coordinated with sometimes law enforcement, sometimes let's just say federal agencies on stuff that has a national security overtone to it. Worked with people involved in rescuing kids in human trafficking, where somebody across the country says, man, I see something in this particular town in Arizona. There's a white pickup truck. There's this building. There's this. There's a 6-month-old baby. There's blah, blah, blah. And I have a friend that happens to be 2 hours away that works in trafficking. She's like, all right, I'm on my way down and talking to the pastor, in the town, finding out, is there a family here that fits this description, that drives this kind of, and then locating people, sometimes rescuing people, sometimes keeping people safe. Like, it all sounds fluffy and gooey until you put law enforcement in. And when you start realizing that there's actual law enforcement officers that are obviously, they don't waste time. They're very, very serious about what they do, about keeping people safe, about protecting or rescuing people. And when they listen to what you have to say, and then you hear some of the backstories about how some of the largest takedowns in things like human trafficking have come because of spiritual intelligence, because of dreams. Or I have friends that can tell you stories about literally airliners that had a bomb on board and somebody had a dream about it with times, dates, locations. And it was so credible because, man, this lady knows the flight number, when it's leaving, where it's landing, and that they stopped the plane. They pulled everybody off. And sure enough, there was a bomb on board and they saved everybody on the airline. So if you're new to this, that's okay, because most people don't look at dreams that way. They look at dreams as, whatever. If it's really shocks me, or if it's about my mom or something, I'll pay attention. But I'm here to tell you, God can give you dreams that'll absolutely blow your mind with information that you would never even conceive of.
And that's the part and I get it. I get where the audience, I was one of the most like, like I don't believe anything. Like I don't trust nobody, right? And my world has definitely changed the last few years. But I want to remind people, if you believe in God and you believe in the scripture and you go to the scripture, this was something that God used dreams through people. Why do we think that why wouldn't he stop? Why would he just stop doing that? Like, I don't think he would. So, I just want to remind everybody about that. Like, if you believe in God, then he's already done this before. So, John, kick us off, man. Let's let's listen to the dream.
All right, here we go.
Date is Thursday, June 15th, 2023, 7:45 in the morning Pacific time. This is a raw dictation of a dream that I just woke up from a little while ago. Circumstances surrounding my sleep. My little girl, Alexandria, 2.5 years old, is been fighting a fever for 2 days and 1 night. This will be day 3 of that fever. So it's been broken sleep the last few nights. So here are the details of the dream. It's the scene is somewhere with like very small mountains or rolling hills around it, a lot of greenage. And I'm on a U.S. military base that's surrounded by some type of orchard. The trees have a real dark colored wood or bark to them. It's some kind of round fruit. Don't remember the fruit. Just do remember the trees very vividly. And the base that I'm on doesn't seem very large. Actually resembles more of a camp than it does a base. But it's with structures, not tents. The structures are old style, like Kwanzaa huts, and couple square buildings. The color of the buildings kind of like a dirty toothpaste color, like a dirty off white, almost even beige. The vehicles that I see around, it's only a few vehicles, and they're definitely like a World War II era. They're the older Jeeps, not even the modern Jeeps. Definitely not the modern Jeeps. But definitely World War II. Slight chance maybe Vietnam, but they looked older. The uniforms do resemble something more from Vietnam, with like the solid greens, the olive drab military uniform. Nothing with a camouflage pattern. But in the dream, I'm with a group of guys, like a small unit. I don't recognize any of them in the dreams. Don't recognize any faces. Don't recognize any of their names or the sounds of their voices. It's the unit I'm attached to, but nobody in the dream from that unit is familiar to me. In the dream, we keep talking about sniper shots, assassinations, and forgive me if my thoughts are broken. I'm still very tired. We start walking. We're driving on one of these old Jeeps, and I remember on the old Jeep, there's no weapon system on it, but I'm kind of pretending with my arms like if I'm behind a sniper rifle on the Jeep. We end up driving the Jeep to around the edge of the camp. just a short ways, and then we stop it, we dismount, and one of the guys, skinny black Marine or soldier, says, "Hey man, I got to show you something." So I'm like, "All right, man, cool." And so we start walking to the largest Kwanzaa hut on the base. And as we're walking there, we walk past two guys that are sitting on the wall. It's a retaining wall, because the top of the wall meets the ground level from the path that we're walking on by these orchard trees. And then there's the bottom of the wall, the retaining wall, which is where the Kwanzaa hut is that we're going towards. And it's only maybe a 3-foot wall. It's like I said, it looks more like a retaining wall. And I'd look at one of the gentlemen, and it's General Flynn, like undoubtedly General Flynn. And he looks at me, and I look at him, but we don't say anything to each other. And the other guy that's next to him, sitting to his left, keeps remaining in conversation. As we get closer to the Kwanzaa hut, now it's interesting. So this Kwanzaa hut that we're going to, now it's still the largest Kwanzaa hut, but now it's inside of like an airline hangar, like a plane hangar, that's open on, at least on one side. I don't remember if the other side's open, but it's just interesting to me. It wasn't there when we were initially walking to it. Then when I turned from General Flynn, looked back at it, now there's this air, jet hangar that's over this Kwanzaa hut. We walk in. Actually, as we're walking there, these two other gentlemen that are sitting right at the edge of the airline hangar. And like I said, the guy I'm following is this skinny black soldier or black Marine. Looks very young. And I don't remember what he was saying, but he did have me laughing. He was very funny. And as we walk past these two guys to get to the stairs, to get to the bottom retaining wall, the walkway, one of them makes a comment of something like, "This shouldn't be about Black Power, or is this about Black Power?" Some phrase about Black Power. And the guy I'm following, who's the black guy, doesn't say anything. Just ignores him. And then I look at him, and I just kind of hit my chest with my fist, and just kind of pointed at him like a Black Power thing, just trying to turn what he said into some humor, whether he meant it that way or not. Now we walk. We open the door to the Kwanzaa hut, and we walk in, and there's two huge boxing rings being built side by side, identical rings, and they're beautiful. They have the patriotic colors on the rope, on the corner posts. Just beautiful boxing rings. Like I can see those in my mind right now, very detailed. And what was really cool about them, it wasn't just the boxing ring, but it was a boxing ring that had this other platform that went around both rings. So if we're training, you wouldn't do it during a match, but training, coach kind of run around the inside, the entire circumference of the ring. So anyways, both of them had this. They were white canvas, and then like I said, everything else was the patriotic colors. And they were just beautiful rings. Now here's the interesting thing. I asked the black guy, I'm like, "What are these doing here?" And he goes, the general wanted them here. And like I said, I just seen General Flynn. And I'm like, "Well, this is pretty cool." But I remember asking, "Why here?" And I remember the reason I asked that question, I do remember, is I remember thinking like, this is cool for us, but this is we're in a combat zone. So even though there was no action in the stream, no fighting, shooting, combat. There's nothing like that. But I knew that we were in a combat zone, but nothing in the dream, other than my acknowledgement of a combat zone, showed signs of combat. And he goes, General just wanted him here. And I was like, all right. And now I finally see two people I know. The first one I see is, excuse me. So sorry. I tell you, I just woke up. First one I see is an old partner from my police department. He's actually the very first one that betrayed me in this whole saga of what I've been going through. He's also the one that got me into boxing and set me up with my coach. And so he's building the ring. He's on the outside of one of the skirts. And I go next to him. And I'm like, oh, it looks like it's time for me to get in shape. And I don't know if I said it or not, but I used to do amateur boxing for the police, fire, military league. And he doesn't say anything. Doesn't even acknowledge me. Like it's like if he didn't hear me. And I remember thinking like, all right, whatever. But in the other corner, I see my old coach, whose family has a former boxing champion, all of them historic champion boxing fighters. If I said their names, people would definitely know who they are. He coaches now continually. He's coached several world heavyweight champion fighters, and out here in Southern California, I just happened to be lucky enough to be put in position with him to get trained by him. And I see him. I guess there's nothing wrong with saying his name. It's just a dream. But I see Coach Diaz, and I go up to Joel, and I'm like, hey, Coach, looks like it's time to get in shape. And, Coach has always treated me with so much love. I love that man. Very great man. And he, too, he doesn't say anything. He doesn't even turn to look, like who said that, or if he didn't recognize my voice, which I think he would. He just keeps, turning the wrench on this corner area of the boxing ring. And I remember thinking like, okay, can't they hear me? And I'm looking around, and it's just like people are just walking through, where I'm walking, and it's like I almost feel like a ghost. I'm not, but I almost feel like one. And so I leave the gym, and I'm with that black guy again. And this time we walked to another area of the camp. And as we're walking, we're talking about an old, like some old combat memory. But it's not a real combat memory of mine. But I'm sharing it with them as it is. But I'm telling them how, there was this sniper, enemy sniper, that kept taking a bunch of our guys down. And, it was my job to take him down. And I tell them how during one of these combat exchanges, I tell one of my guys who's crossing the plane that's taking fire from the sniper, he finally makes it to cover. And I tell him to, hey, run back out to draw the sniper fire so I can shoot him. And he does, and I take him down. Now, like I said, that's not a real combat story. But the interesting thing to that, it is a real partial real combat story to one that's been shared with me. That was shared by a buddy of mine who's a Marine Corps veteran, and he works for a major news publication, conservative one. And he talks about how when he was a new Marine, out in Afghanistan. He's in this combat engagement. They're taking fire. That is, I don't remember if it was his platoon leader or fire team leader, but tells him, hey, when I tell you to, you're going to pop up, draw fire so I can take out the enemy. And he goes, all right. And he goes, all right. And so he's about to pop up, and the squad leader, fire team leader, grabs him by his flak jacket, says, holds him down. He's like, I'm just kidding, dummy. So it's actually a funny story. And in the dream, I know I'm referencing that story. So I don't understand. I don't know what sense to make out of that. But now we take, the dream's coming to an end. We're walking down this path. It's sunny out. It's actually a really beautiful day. And we're walking down this path. And it's a road path for the vehicles, but it's not paved. It's just, the tires have, made their markings in the grass that you can tell, this is a vehicle pathway. And as we're walking that pathway, one of the guys that's in this group with me says, hey man, what was your record? And as I'm about to answer, somebody else says 3-1. And then someone else reiterates it. Oh yeah, nice, 3-1. But my record wasn't, my official record is not 3-1. It's actually 2-1. And I remember thinking, like, why they say that record? And then I woke up, and this one just seemed like I needed to share it, especially since, it involved General Flynn and some of the different variables that I've shared with you.
So there we are, man. I tell you, scatterbrain alpha, everybody, scatterbrain alpha. But God doesn't make mistakes. And I wrote down a couple of notes and questions I had, but where do you even begin with that, man?
That's a really good question. First of all, phenomenal dream, lots of detail. To get the full expression of every nuance in the dream would literally take days. Because think about this. If you wanted to relay a message to me so nobody else would understand it, and you were going to make a movie, every single thing in the movie, from the color of the pants to the olive drab shirts to the World War II Jeeps to the beige Quonset huts like dirty toothpaste, everything in there would be a nuance that either I would know or would be part of a secret message that would provide a level of detail and color to the message that you were trying to convey to me. And so what I do is I teach what I call the Joseph method. And it's back to the Bible. It's not anything that I made up. My name's not Joseph, but in the Bible, in Genesis 41, Pharaoh had 2 dreams. They were very, very troubling for him. And so he found a guy, which was Joseph, and he brought him in and he shared the dreams with him, and Joseph unpacked them. But the first thing he does is he identifies major components or major symbols, and then he interprets what those symbols mean. And then he says, here's what the dream means, which is what we call the conclusive summary. And then there's one more layer where he says, here's what you should do, which is what we call actionable intelligence. So, so the first thing that I do is I took notes, and I just began to write down a lot of what you said, as far as, everything from small mounds, rolling hills, a lot of greenage, U.S. military base surrounded by an orchard, dark trees, round fruit. And so then I just get quiet and I hear certain things, and it begins to provide a level of context to what the figurative language is. And
I do want to add one thing, and I have these 2 photos because I tried to explain it as best I could. But when I said there was this Kwanzaa hut, and then it was inside when I first see it, it's just this large Kwanzaa hut. And then after I look at the general and I turn back, now it's the same Kwanzaa hut, but now the Kwanzaa hut's inside a big airport hangar. This is a Kwanzaa hut, you guys. So obviously this is a smaller one, but I see a big, large version of this. And then I'm looking at General Flynn, and then when I turn around, I see that same Kwanzaa hut, but now it's inside a big hangar like this. So hopefully I communicated that good enough for visual, but I just wanted to make sure, because for whatever reason, that part stuck out to me, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's huge. So what I want to do, just because there's a lot of people that they don't have much of a grid for this. And so if I just tell the meaning and say, well, here's what I think it means, people will be like, how in the heck did you get that? And so it's better. So when we do what we call a briefing, and we do military style briefings, sometimes to high level military people, depending on who they are. And we've briefed generals even recently on some things. If they kind of want the overview, we give them the overview. But for the sake of really creating a level of understanding, what I'd like to do is just kind of go through fairly fast some of the things that you said and what I saw, and then I'll begin to tie it in together. And then I have one question, though, for you. The tall, skinny black guy, did you know him?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. It's so cool because when you do this and people start saying things in their dreams, you begin to know what they mean. And so you start smiling while they're talking, and they're like, what? And I'm like, well, I know what that means. They're like, well, what does it mean? Well, finish telling me the dream. But it's super cool.
And that's why, the little details are so important. Like obviously in the dream, I don't know where the hell I'm at, but I do know that this, this military base I'm in, I remember this orchard, the trees were very distinct. Like I said, they had that really, dark bark,
Mm-hmm.
And for someone like you who, will study the dream or maybe even share it with people, they may be, I know where that's at, or I know where something similar to an orchard like that's at, or buildings that match that color. So I was really trying to make sure I recorded every detail, because I just, like you just said, it all has to be important because that's the way my God put it in my mind.
Yeah.
So I don't want to discount anything. Even at the end where it's the pathway that we're walking on, you could see how the tires, obviously that base was not a new base, because those tire tracks were embedded in the grass, so you're at least a couple weeks old, but I'm excited, man, especially since you're smiling about that black guy. Cause I'm like, all right, man, I want to know.
Well, I appreciate, you did it right, man. I appreciate the detail. If you're ever in a particular situation, particularly if you ever have a dream related to national security or related to something about human trafficking or finding missing persons. And, I've done shows on my channel, Dream Life Decoded on YouTube, where I do a show called Dream Talks. And we have people on there that have literally solved murders because they had dreams. And the person was just missing. And then they went to law enforcement and they said, well, he's dead. He's in the trunk of his car. He's in this ravine. And they're like, wait a minute, how do you know all this? And then, well, I had a dream. And then they're like, oh, we can't solve a murder based on a dream, until they find the guy in the trunk of his car in a ravine, and then they're like, what in the heck is going on? And so you're not a believer until you are. But one of the things that we've been able to do is, there are certain times that somebody will describe a scene and it'll just hit me funny. I wonder if that's real. And I tell you what, if you want to freak somebody out, you find an actual picture of either, because I've had people dream about stuff that happened 50 years ago, but it was a historic event. It was actually JFK cabinet room, XCOM during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And in this dream, they see who's at the table. And so I go to the JFK library online and I pull the picture with who's at the and I send them the picture. Did it look like this? And they even knew what portrait was on the wall. It was a portrait of George Washington, and George Washington is on the wall above the fireplace, and they absolutely freak out when you send somebody a real life photo of a place they had in a dream or a historical event, and they're like, that was real? You're like, yes, that was real. Like, you saw that. And then people are like, how do you explain that?
That is wild, man.
It's crazy, but it's fun. It's fun. Well, let's I'm just going to start going through some of this, and then feel free to interrupt. I mean, this is a dialogue, so back and forth is good, however you want to do it. But I'm just going to start kind of going through. I took a lot of detailed notes. We won't probably go over all of them, but I put particularly in bold which ones would be of some value to the decode. So you ready?
Absolutely, brother.
Okay. So you started out with a scene, small mounds, rolling hills, greenage. What I heard was soft terrain. In other words, there's no cliffs, there's no mountains. If you're out in the field and you got to climb a cliff, it's a tough day. Or if you're in winter camp, in the Arctic, it's a lot different than if you're just walking across the field in Middle Tennessee or Pennsylvania. So that's what this was. This was a pretty easy place to get to. Soft terrain, no cliffs, not rough. You said U.S. military base. I heard staging area, friends, and good guys. Surrounded by orchards, dark trees, round fruit. So what I heard was full of dark fruit, which is interesting because this is a military base and we believe the military are the good guys. So there's already likes to juxtaposition of what does good guys mean on a place that's full of dark fruit. Interesting. Base is not large, like a camp with structures, not tents. And I put semi-established. So it's not temporary like tents we can get up and move, but it's not like they built 20-story complexes here. It's semi-established. Quonset hut, sturdy off-white, I put not new. Vehicles, World War II era. Here's what I heard. Prepped for the old war, or old motives drive them. Which is, again, by itself, it doesn't think of much. But as you go down the rabbit hole, then you begin to see there's conflict. You're in a war zone, number one. And number two, there's these two boxing rings. And so there's a level of conflict, which means there's two sides. So what are the sides? What's going on? So it's interesting that the side in the broader picture of where the U.S. military base is the World War II Jeeps. They're prepped for the old war, and old motives are driving them.
And it was interesting because outside of like movies or things I've studied, I've never actually seen like a World War II Jeep like in person. But yet in the dream, it was just detailed to like where even the spare tire tread, like it was so vivid, man.
Mm-hmm. Almost like you were there.
Almost like I was there, man. Yeah.
So the uniforms resemble Vietnam, solid green, olive drab. So what I heard is I had just been reading a book called White House Warriors, and it's about the development of the National Security Council. And they're talking about getting mired down in Vietnam. And so if I hadn't been reading that book, that reference wouldn't mean as much. But God knew we were going to have this discussion. I'm reading that book here, and so even all the pieces of how this means anything to me when it's your dream comes into play, really makes this whole thing like a supernatural experience. But what I heard, and this kind of defined the whole policy structure of the Vietnam War, I heard progressive escalation, respond in kind. And then I heard old mantles, old mindsets. I was a big fan of General Colin Powell, and I've met him, and I read his book, and he was a guy that, because of his time in Vietnam, as you know, he fought tooth and nail as Secretary of State, as Joint Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, as National Security Advisor, for us to not get mired in a position where we would trade bodies for bodies like we did in Vietnam. There's no progressive escalation. If we're going to go in again, we're going to go with overwhelming force, and we're going to win in a matter of hours. And it was him and Stormin' Norman that did that in the war that I was involved in, which was the liberation of Kuwait, the first Persian Gulf War. And so those old mindsets of like, well, we can't just go in and take over. We got to escalate a little bit, and they kill a bunch of our guys. Now we got to go kill a bunch of their guys, and then we got to. And so that's what I saw. All of that thought is encapsulated in the uniforms resemble Vietnam, solid green and olive drab. Now, those uniforms are really depressing too. They're just drab is right. They represent something old. They represent literally 50 years ago. They don't represent the best of the U.S. military. There's a lot of people in the military, a lot of former people in the military that want to forget those days because the government didn't support people like we should. The people didn't support the veterans that came back. It just wasn't. It was a really difficult time, a controversial time. But I think it's interesting that when you think of clothes, you put on when you put on clothes, it's like a mantle, like you're wearing a hat that people are going to identify you and be like, I wonder if this guy's from Ukraine. No, they're going to be like, okay, we know who he is. We know at least a level of what he stands for because the clothes that you put on, they cover a level of exposure, but they also provide something for others to see. They're how the world will experience you. Like if you put on a coat versus if you put on a sequins dress, or if you're wearing shorts versus if you're in full dress uniform. They all say different things about how the world perceives you, about what you're preparing for and what you're getting ready for. So if these guys are wearing uniforms from 50 years ago, you got to think they got the same mindset to follow that, which what was Vietnam? It was progressive escalation, respond in kind. And so it's something that we've quickly wanted to completely flush from our policy making. Nobody ever wants to be mired in a situation like the Civil War again, though. I think we were in Afghanistan for 20 years.
Yep.
So any comments on that? Any thoughts? I know
No, man, I'm tripping out on this. One of the things that was interesting is, as I was listening to you, and I'm listening to you and going back to, once again, those visuals, is in the dream, like I can see everybody, but like I can't see myself, but I know what I'm wearing. Like I know I'm matching everybody, but it's almost like it's like I'm looking through like VR goggles to where I see everything. But like if my hand goes out or something like this, like I don't see that stuff. Does that make sense, or am I? Does it sound confusing?
No, that's really cool because there's different kinds of dreams. Some people have dreams where it's almost like a movie or like they're sitting up in a corner of a room looking down on two people having dinner. They're not part of the discussion. They can observe everything. They can see what's happening. I've had people had this. And then they go to work the next day and it was about the boss talking to the assistant about the person that was the dreamer. And they're like, hey, did you have lunch with the boss yesterday? Yeah. Did you guys go to Fabio's? Yeah. What did you see us there? You were wearing your green dress, weren't you? Yeah. How did you know that? Did you guys talk about me? And then the other person's completely wigging out because it's like totally like they were there. So people ask me all the time, was I really there? Which we would call an encounter, or was it a dream? And my question is, does it matter? And it'd be almost impossible to prove one way or another whether you had a dream. But when people have an experience like that, it's hard for them to think of dreams as, oh, it was just a piece of pizza, or it was just some thought I was worried about work. No, you observed something that actually took place in real life. So this is where Jung and Freud go out the window, because they're like, well, your mother abused you as a kid and it's your overwhelming sex drive for your assistant. That, no, it has nothing to do with that at all. It was like you were literally transported there invisibly and observed some things that people freak out when you tell them about it. So we've seen enough things like that for people to really for us to understand that dreams are something special, and that's why we feel like they're spiritual intelligence and they're supernatural. So other times you're in the dream, and obviously if you're looking out through your eyes, you're not seeing yourself. It's like you're experiencing it personally, like you were actually there. But were you actually there? Because there's certain people that you talk to that don't talk back, and it's almost like they don't see you, and you're like questioning, am I a ghost? And that's an important part of the dream. We'll get there. So you're with groups of guys, a small unit. So I heard special unit, not main body. No one recognizable. Okay, so that's a general setting, and that's like, it's also covert. It was so covert you didn't even know who else was in the unit with you. But what's interesting is, like, if you paint a big picture and way up in the corner you have like some clouds, they're kind of out of focus, and what's really a focus is the center of the picture. It doesn't matter what's over here. It's the mountains, 3 mountain ranges back in the background. Nobody cares about the detail on those mountains. They care about where your eye is going to go on the center of the picture. God's the same way. So there's things that are kind of intentionally gray because they don't change the meaning of the dream. It wasn't like you needed to know who was in the unit. You just needed to know you were in a small unit with some guys. So this is interesting. You're talking about shots and assassinations, sniper shots and assassinations. And what I heard was remembering past battles. And that's what happens, right? When old warriors or sea dogs or Navy guys, whatever, get together, we talk about, hey, remember when we did this, remember that, and remember the good old days, and remember when we evacuated Clark Air Force Base and we took all these people off during Mount Pinatubo. And, I was just reminiscing with a buddy of mine, an old shipmate of mine from 20 years ago, and we were having that exact conversation. So that happens. But you're literally remembering past battles, which is interesting because it plays later into the dream. And then you start walking, which is forward momentum. So you're with a group and you're moving forward. And then you get into one of the old Jeeps. And I heard driven by the old ways. Again, the context is an old base. It's got off-white stuff. It's got World War II vehicles. It's got Vietnam era. It's got this mishmash of old things, which are old mindsets. It's not a newly constructed base. It's like different things thrown together from different eras. All of that paint, if you will, in the canvas of your dream is important. So you could drive around the edge of the camp, which is like securing the perimeter. There was no weapon systems on the Jeep. So you're literally defenseless. Of course, you're on a U.S. base, so it's probably not a concern. If you're in a forward operating area and you're in a war zone, which you said you're in a war zone, you don't go outside the gate without a 50 cal mounted and everybody locked and loaded. That's just the way it is. So you're driving around the base, but you have the presence of mind to note, as a good warrior should, we don't have any guns on this thing. And so you started pretending with your arms like there was sniper fire, like you're doing the
doing like this thing.
Exactly. Like you got a gun, and what I heard was, okay, so you're defenseless, but you're like itching for a fight. Like, where's the action? I remember, you're talking about the days of sniper assassinations, sniper shots. Now you're looking around like you're locked and loaded. You drive to the edge of the camp, which I heard safety zone, and then you dismount, and then the skinny black Marine or soldier shows up, and I put guide ? Now, George Washington allegedly, and I'm working to verify this, there's historians that don't agree, there's some that do agree, But if you look up George Washington visions or George Washington dreams, it's actually supposedly an open-eyed vision that he had in 1777 at Valley Forge, where he saw three great woes, where he saw England against the United States, he saw a coming war of brother against brother, and then he saw a final battle, a final war of basically the whole world against the Union. And there's an active God that comes into play that ends up saving the Union. And a lot of people think that that's where we're at now with the globalists and everything else. But what's really interesting is in the middle of the dream or the visions, there's what he refers to as a shadowy black figure.
Dude, you just gave me goosebumps.
Right? Like this goes back to George Washington, bro. So the shadowy figure comes down and scoops up water from the ocean and pours it on England and the United States, and then the nations go to war. And so I recently interpreted a dream that had an unknown man in a black suit and shadowy figure from George Washington came into play, as did a bunch of other, men in black, as well as songs of Johnny Cash. And, it was interesting because there was a reference to Johnny Cash in this dream. And I looked up the songs of Johnny Cash, and there's a song called I Saw Man. And the first part of this dream was I saw an unknown man in a black suit. Well, the song I Saw Man, never heard of it before. I look it up. I look at the words. It's about an angelic visitation in a dream. I'm like, what the heck? Like, you feel like you live in the Twilight Zone if you go down these rabbit holes. I'm telling you, if you're bored or you want some adventure in your life, dive into your dreams, write them all down. There's even people like Glenn Beck had a dream that he recently shared that, major people that are talking about their dreams. We have dreams that presidents have had. It's crazy, crazy stuff. But what's really cool is when God will give a reference that references another dream in another time of war, in another battle, somebody like potentially George Washington. The account was first written in a newspaper in 1860. The guy had heard the story from a guy that was supposedly 99 years old and at Valley Forge with General Washington. It's problematic, by what I've heard, to look up the records of Valley Forge and find this guy's name. Apparently it's not there. So they can't tie this guy from what this newspaper man said to actually being 1777 with General Washington at Valley Forge. And so there's people that doubt the validity of the dream. I'll tell you this, or vision. Dreams and visions are kind of the same thing. At least you look at them the same. In studying dreams for a long period of time, to me, it sounds perfectly legit. And so who knows? But it's just interesting when you start looking at dreams of, you pull up dreams of former generals or former presidents, and they're very similar to some of the things that we have. On the morning that Abraham Lincoln was shot, there's documents from a cabinet meeting that he had at the White House where he looks at General Grant. And I say this because I'm building a base for military and generals and dreams. He looks at General Grant and he said, "Did we hear from Sherman?" And General Grant's like, no. Like, he's going to get this. He's pursuing this Confederate general, getting him to sign the peace treaty. We already signed at Appomattox. The war ended 2 or 3 days ago. He said, "Were you expecting to hear from him?" And then Lincoln looks over at the Secretary of the Navy and says, "Well, it's kind of in your department there, Bob." His name wasn't Bob, but I forget his name at the moment. But he said, "I had a dream last night. And I had a dream that there was a fast-moving ship. I was standing on a cement pier, and there was a fast-moving ship traveling to a distant shore, and it was being chased by one of our ships. And there was a battle on the ground and something." He goes, "I've had this dream every time before. I had it before Gettysburg, Fredericksburg, Murfreesboro, Antietam, Bull Run. And so I know that it portends an event of national importance." And Grant freaks out, and he looks up and he goes, "Sir, We didn't win every one of those battles. He said, I didn't say it foretold a victory. I said it foretold that that day an event of national importance would happen.
Wow.
That night he went to Ford's Theater, April 14th, 1865. So looking at some of this history, I'm actually, we're going to do a course on dreams of presidents where we're going to bring up all of this history and tell the story, tell the dream, tell what happened afterwards, because Lincoln had multiple dreams or apparitions or visions concerning his assassination. And that was one of them, the morning of. And so when you get into this stuff, it's just kind of mind blowing what you hear.
Man, I look forward to that.
So no one recognizable, general setting, covert, remembering past battles. Okay. Oh, so skinny black Marine or soldier. I feel like this guy was a guide and or an angel. Because if you look at the dreams in the Bible, this will freak you out too. Go through Daniel, look up like Daniel's first dream. If you look up the dreams of like Daniel in the Bible, or you look up like John in Revelation, he sees things and there's an angel with him. And then he looks at the angel and he asks some questions. What is this? Why are there boxing rings inside here? And then it's like, well, the general wanted here, but why here? That's exactly what happens in the Bible. These guys see stuff.
I'm serious, man. I got goosebumps right now, John. Like this is intense.
I mean, it's crazy. They see stuff they don't understand. They ask a guide that's been with them the whole time. And I don't mean guide like New Age spirit. I mean like an angel. But in the dream, you wouldn't recognize this guy as being an angel. You're like, oh, he's just another soldier. He happens to be black. He happens to be skinny. He's with me the whole time, So whatever. But he's the only one you ask questions to. You don't go ask the general, why are you doing this here? You don't ask the other guy. You try to talk to your coach or to the guy that betrayed you, your first partner, but you get zero response from them. The only person you actually interact with is this guy, and he keeps showing up at different places in the dream. That's why when you mentioned him, I was kind of smiling. I'm like, you're going to like this. So the first thing that happens, and again, this happens in Daniel, it happens in Revelation, is you dismount from the Jeep. The skinny black Marine or soldier says, hey, I got something to show you. He literally reveals something to you. Come over here and look at this. And there's multiple times in the Bible where it's like, come up here. I want to show you something. And then they're caught up in a vision. And then they see that, what is this? And they begin to ask questions. So it's really interesting how this parallels some things from the dreams or the visions or the alleged visions of George Washington to things that even happen in scripture. And what you begin to understand is God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Why wouldn't he speak to you that way? What's also interesting is when you realize something very similar to what you experienced happened thousands of years ago and it was documented and written down. Now suddenly you're like a drop in the ocean. Like this is way bigger than you. And suddenly there's no doubt in your mind, this was not a piece of pizza. This was not a lack of sleep because my daughter had a fever. This is a supernatural message and it's very important and I need to understand. And this is when you really want to press in and understand every detail. So, hey, I got to show you something. He's revealing something to you. You walk to the largest Quonset hunt on base, which I just heard big surprise. Like you could have gone to any one of the buildings. You go to the largest one on the edge of the base. There's a retaining wall with trees on top. The bottom is hut level. What I heard is root level of the dark orchard. So the Bible talks about trees. Actually, Nebuchadnezzar had this massive dream of a tree, which again, like God uses the same language, bro. You go back and you read Daniel 4 about the dream of the tree, and he describes this massive tree, and then the tree is cut down, and then there's like a leash or a bracket or like a chain put around the stump of the tree, and this is specifically about Nebuchadnezzar himself. And then, basically God was saying, check your pride, or you're literally going to crawl around a field like an animal eating the dew off the grass and eating grass for 7 years. And he checks his pride for about a year, and then he gets prideful. And that's what happens. He loses his mind, and he literally spends 7 years living out in a field like an animal. His nails grow long like claws. And, and after 7 years, he gets his mind back, and he praises God because God warned him. He told him, and everything he said came true, but he uses a tree. So when you're talking about dark trees, it's an interesting way to describe a tree. And so trees can mean leaders. But when you're talking about fruit, the fruit of a dark tree could be like, could that possibly be the deep state? Could it be some nefarious things that are going on that are counter to the Constitution or the Democratic Republic that the founding fathers set up for us? Is there some weird things well, we all know that that's happening. We all can see. I mean, you would have talked about this stuff 10 years ago. People would have thought you were nuts. Everybody loved the president and the military and the government and the CIA and the FBI. Those are all the good guys. Everybody's doing great. We all wanted to even consider being a part of those organizations. And now it's just like, it's a different story. We're in a different time. And so the dark orchard, underneath the dark orchard, next to the dark orchard is this retaining wall. The orchard is on top. The wall is next to it. And there's two people sitting on the wall. And what I heard was the root of the dark orchard. So you're about to see something that goes beyond just the trees and now gets down to the root of the dark orchard, which I think is super interesting. So you pass two guys sitting on the wall, and one of them happens to be General Flynn. And I immediately, by the way, this is super cool. If this is a new experience for you, just bear with me. I could prove it to you 1,000 different ways. Most people have never heard this, but God speaks movie. So God will literally quote movie lines, tell you things from movies that you would see. I'm not talking like the 10 Commandments. And so when I went through this again, and you said there's two people sitting on the wall, one of them is undoubtedly General Flynn. I immediately saw Jack Nicholson. You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. I'm just like, yes, because the reference is a general saying that, but he's talking in particular about manning the base, being the front line against the enemy. And so here's a general sitting on that wall. So the reference like perfectly fits to what he's saying in the movie, what movie was that, by the way? A Few Good Men? Yeah. So, and again, if I had more time, what I would then do is I would go back and watch that whole movie, look at the reference. What does it mean? Is there more understanding that I can gain from that? Because every little nuance is important. So the two guys, you want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. The retaining wall is for the orchard at the top, and at the bottom is the root level of the dark orchard. One of the men is undoubtedly General Flynn. So here's what I heard. I heard National Security Advisor. Now, he wasn't National Security Advisor very long, but that was like the last big official government position that he had, and that's the first thing I heard. The other thing I heard is seen as a patriot. And then the last thing I put was actionable intel. So just a little story so you can understand what I mean by that is if there was one guy in the military that was the head of the current patriot movement, who would it be?
General Flynn.
Clearly General Flynn. He goes to all the Reawaken America tours. He's working with Clay. He's speaking at all these events. People know his story. They've seen the movie. I've seen the movie, read his book, and read his white paper. Now, what's interesting about his white paper and why? Because he's come up in multiple dreams. I've met him a couple of times. Fascinating man. But what's interesting is he's come up in not just my dreams or your dreams, but other people that I've never met are like, oh, I had a dream about General Flynn. Well, it's interesting. And when you put 2 or 3 of these dreams together with dreamers that don't know each other, and they kind of say almost the exact same thing, then you're really like, man, I live in the Twilight Zone. What is even going on right now? You know?
You get those moments where you're like, I better start listening.
You're like, man, what is this? Is weird. And so he's seen as a patriot. But it's interesting that he was fired by, I believe it was Barack Obama. And it was specifically because he raised awareness on actionable intelligence. And he wrote a white paper that said, I forget, I actually have it downloaded, but it was like, I think it was redefining intelligence. And the whole premise was, we have soldiers in the field in Afghanistan, and we're not providing them with actionable intelligence on how to operate over there. And so what to me, what's fascinating is when I really started getting deep into dreams, I noticed that people will be like, oh, you had a dream and God wasn't there, and people will look at a dream like this and say, oh, well, Alpha, God just wants to let you know that he loves you.
I know God loves me.
I know God loves me. And why did he give me all this detail if he just wanted to say, oh, I just want you to know that I'm with you in the battle that you're in? Like, come on, man. I got 2 pages of notes here. God put every nuance in this dream. And so I started, before I really understood who General Flynn was, I started pinging on 2 words related to dream interpretation, and it was actionable intelligence. And so when I read his book and I realize this is the bell that this man has been ringing since the Obama days, was actionable intelligence, I'm like, man, I really like this cat. I really understand where he's going. Because you can have all the intel in the world. If the guy with the gun on the front line doesn't know where to go or what to do or have the right equipment, your intelligence apparatus is absolutely useless. Because intelligence is for operators. It's not just for policymakers. And so that's what General Flynn means to me in this situation. National Security Advisor, and the whole story around that, how long he was there, how the FBI came in, how he was then removed, how all the lawsuits, everything that makes him now seen as a patriot, and then the whole idea of actionable intelligence. So I just say that to explain a little bit of, actionable intel means something to me. It may not mean anything to people. So I just want to let them know. But so there's a guy to his left who remains in the conversation. And I heard a talker or a speaker. Now, a big part of what General Flynn does these days is he speaks publicly at a lot of patriot events. And I feel like the guy next to him was also a speaker, because the reference remains in the conversation. So now as they approach the Quonset hut, your team approaches the Quonset hut, you're now out. It's now inside an airplane hangar. And what I heard was staging for a higher view. So what happens in an airplane? You roll down the tarmac, you take off, you go up, and you can see things from a 50,000 foot level, which means you can see a lot farther. You can see what's coming down the road. You can see the future. You can see in the prophetic. And so this place is a staging area for being in a position where you'll have a higher view. And so a lot of times, one dream isn't the be all and end all. It tells a piece of a story. And when you put it together with other dreams, things begin to unpack, but that's what's happening. One side of the hangar is open. I put exposed to the world. It wasn't there initially. The Quonset hut was not inside a hangar initially. And here's what I heard. Things are not as they seem. We all know that inherently, but I don't think we know the level right now of things are not as they seem. I don't think people can even begin to comprehend how much things are not as they seem right now. I tell people, trust 50% at most of what you hear and nothing that you see. Nothing. I don't care if you go outside and you look up and there's an alien attack. Don't trust it. I don't care if it's your favorite person on the internet. All of that stuff can be faked. Everything at this point is a show, and it's a deep psyop. And, we know a lot about that, but things are not as they seem. So it's interesting when the guy says this shouldn't be about Black power. I hear racial overtones. One of and everybody knows this inherently. I'm not saying anything that people don't know, but one of the things that particular troublemakers and particular sides of certain equations try to do is throw out the race card. And what it does to a lot of people is shuts them down. And I wish that they wouldn't be shut down. I would say to somebody that, and I've had people, have a discussion and then throw the race card. And then I'll say the race card is no longer an excuse for useful dialogue. Like, you want to debate me, debate me. You want to call me racist? I'm not going to stop saying what I'm saying and back away because you do that. And so this shouldn't be about Black power. That's the thing. And what happens all the time, almost without fail, every single time the race stuff is put out there, especially in the media, it's a distraction. Why? Because it's an emotional issue. And people will immediately pick sides, and then they can divide and conquer. And then nobody's talking about what's really happening in the administration. They're talking about the alleged sub that allegedly, I'm just like, or they're talking about the Will Smith slap at the Oscar. Like, don't even waste your time talking about that stuff or trying to prove that it did or did not happen. Because any energy you put in that direction, you take your eye off the ball. It's 100% distraction. Doesn't matter if it's real, doesn't matter if it's staged, doesn't matter if it's not staged, doesn't matter. None of that matters. The point is they're trying to hide something in the news cycle every single time. So that's what I saw. This shouldn't be about Black power. I'm like, oh, okay. So we're going to throw out the race card, highly emotionally charged issue, and throw it in the middle of what's going on. But notice it's right as you're about to find out what's inside the Quonset hut. The big reveal of the dream is about to happen, and here comes the racial overtones. So the guy that's following doesn't say anything. I put no comment or mouth shut. And then you hit your chest and you point at the Black guy as a joke. And what I heard was mocking, which basically means you're over it. Like, you're not going to play that crap with me. You're not going to shut me down because you say, well, it's about Black this or Black that. Like, bro, I'm the wrong guy, which is, I think it's how it should be. So you get inside the hut. There's two huge boxing rings being built side by side. Has anybody ever seen two boxing rings side by side in a massive place with a platform around them? Interesting.
And that was really interesting to me because it had this, like, obviously you see a boxing ring, there's a skirt that goes down. Well, just picture someone flanking those skirts up. So you have like this walking perimeter around each one. Like I said, the rings were beautiful, but it caught my attention. I was like, well, you don't have that though. Yeah, it was interesting, man.
Yeah, so that doesn't occur. Now, just about everything you saw in the dream, you could see in real life. There wasn't anything. I mean, seeing General Flynn there was probably like, oh, I don't see him every day. But everything fits a typical storyline. If you saw it in real life, none of this would really shock you. You might be like, why are the World War II Jeeps here? Or why are they in Vietnam era clothes? But it's just a question. It's not like, E.T. shows up with Sasquatch and carries off your kid. I mean, it's not like something that's completely out of the norm. But then you see something like this and you're just like, that's odd. And here's what I heard. I heard dual fights and I heard show. And then the very next word, which you just said it again, which was burned in your memory, both in the dream, and I've heard you say it several times, was beautiful. I don't know that I describe a boxing ring as beautiful, but it's interesting that you do because it's talking about aesthetics and optics. If you're in the military, bro, and you're just a couple of guys that are going to throw some punches for a couple of the other sweaty guys in green hanging around some particular night, you don't give a flip what it looks like. So if it's beautiful in Patriot colors, red, white, and blue with a brand new white canvas, when would you put a boxing ring together like that?
Like a world championship fight. Like,
and you're going to show the world.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what I heard, aesthetics and optics, and then you put Patriot colors. I said USA overtones or for America. That's what I heard, like a fight for America. And then you had platform around the ring. So literally on a platform, like Rumble, like the news, like the whatever, a major platform, meaning for the world to see. So you ask the Black guy, again, I put guide, shadowy figure, angel, question mark. What are these guys? What are these doing here? And his response was, the general wanted them here. Now, of course, we can assume, since you saw with your own eyes General Flynn right outside, he doesn't play a major role in this other than this part right here. The reason they're building these two side by side with a platform around them in a Quonset hut in an airline hangar was because the general said to. So again, what do we know about the general? We go back up to what I said about the general, and I heard seen as a patriot. I heard national security advisor. So that's the whole story, the plot to set up Trump or whatever that movie is. You know, if you read his book, if you look at all of this stuff, you know, nobody talks about his military history, the stuff that he did in his 20 or 30-year career. Everybody talks about what's happened since Trump was elected in 2016 and what happened as national security advisor and what he's doing now and what he went through. And like all of his life is about the moment he's in. It's not about the 30 years that preceded that. And so what that means is it has something to do with let's say the patriot movement. And I hate the patriot movement because we're all patriots. We love this country. We're all some people may have some beef with the way some people have done some things. We all do. You know, I'm here to tell you, if you are of a particular color or this and you feel you've been marginalized, there's a bunch of us that are ticked off now because of everything from censorship to gas prices. So get over the color of your skin and realize that we all want to fix things so that it's the way that the founding fathers intended, where it's liberty and justice for all. You know, it's the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that's what we want. And that's what, as military people, we fought for. That's what we swore an oath to defend the Constitution for. So I just think it's interesting. So when we say patriot, don't think of how the news media and certain nefarious people and forces have tried to pretend like if you love your country, you're somehow a bad guy. We don't buy into any of that at all. In fact, it's a lie. It just isn't true. So the general wanted them here. What I heard was a coordinated plan from the top levels of what I would say, what I view as the good guys. You know, if you don't have that view of the alleged patriot movement, then, you know, that's all right. You can repent and God will forgive you. But it's really not us versus them. It's just that there's people that want to fight to see this country restored to the greatness that the founding fathers saw. And there are active groups of people that want to tear it to the ground and burn away everything that we've always stood for. So this is part of a coordinated plan. Then you said, why here? And then you said, this is cool for us. And you had a knowingness, even though you didn't see anything, that you were in a combat zone. So if you're in a combat zone, what does that tell you? There's combat. Can't be in a combat zone if there's no war. So you have a recognition that out of the outskirts of this bubble, of this U.S. military base, of this rings inside a Quonset hut, inside an aircraft hangar, inside a military base, that the broader picture of what's going on in the world is we're at war. We're in a time of war. And so you're seeing a microcosm inside of something else, inside of a military base. Huh?
Oh, no. Come on. Hold on. Let's see. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
If you can hear me, John, give me a thumbs up.
Yeah,
all
I
right.
can hear you.
Why can't I hear you? Give me 1 second, everybody.
Okay.
All right, figure this out. I'm going to pull you out and bring you back in. See if that fixes it. All right. You want to say something?
Can you hear me now?
Okay. I can't hear you. How about go ahead and completely leave. I'll stay here, rejoin, and we'll see if that works.
Okay.
All right, you guys, this is live. So while we're doing that, I've been watching you guys in the chat. Thank you guys for letting me know about those trolls. I've been trying to get them out as they come. So I appreciate that. And I am also looking at your guys' take on the different things that are taking place. I want to make sure you guys can hear me. So if you guys can do me a favor in the chat and give me a 5x5 if you can hear my audio. Then, like I said, it looks like John is back. Let me bring him in here.
Hey, man, can you hear me?
No, I still can't hear you.
No.
Okay. All right. Nothing's moved.
Hello, hello, hello.
Does your audio still show the same microphone?
Let me see here.
All right. So audience can hear me 5x5. So curious, the audience,
Hello?
when John's talking, can you guys hear him? Okay, I hear you, so that they can hear me.
Can you hear me now?
All right.
Can you hear me now?
Trying to figure out what's going on. If you go to your
Can you hear
audio
me now?
settings, John,
Hello.
does it show the microphone that you normally were using?
Yeah.
Yeah, why can't I hear you?
Can you hear me now?
They can hear John, so they can hear you. They can hear me. I just can't hear you. This is
You just
bizarre.
can't hear me.
Okay, let me see. Let me remove myself and jump back in and see if that fixes it.
Okay. Thanks for bearing with us, guys.
No, it doesn't. Okay. All right, everybody.
Can
Give
you
me
hear
a
me now?
second. We will figure this one out.
Is it a problem with your headphones? Is it
I'm
your
gonna change
headphones?
my speaker to something else real quick. All right, John, can you hear me?
Can you hear me now? Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, he can still hear me. I can. All right, so the audience can hear both of us. I'm afraid of. All right, you just sent me a chat. Here,
Can
let
you
me
hear
play
me now?
music in here and see if I can hear it.
Hello,
Oh, no,
hello,
it's my
hello.
headphones. Okay, I didn't hear that, so it could be my headphones. All right, let's see. Try.
Hey there, hey there, hey there.
Can you hear the music, John?
I can hear it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it is my headphones. Okay, everybody, bear with me 1 second while I get try to get mine figured out here. My apologies, everyone. All right, I'm going to turn off my soundboard. That won't affect us, and then I'll turn it back on.
Can you hear me now? Outlaw likes the music. Vegas Deplorable. I'd love to see your dreams, man. You can send them to dreamlifedecoded@gmail.com. Dreamlifedecoded. @gmail.com. You're muted. Can you hear me, Alpha? You're muted. Can you hear me now? You're muted. I can't hear you.
All right, now
There
I
you
can
are.
hear you.
Cool.
All right, so
All right.
because I can hear myself. So
Cool.
this is going to get a little weird. You don't have an echo from me though,
No.
or do you?
No.
Okay, so let me do this.
I don't know if the audience does or not, but I don't.
All right, I'm going to try something real quick. All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
me do this. All right, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can't see it, but I can hear you.
All right, I'm trying some MacGyver stuff right now, everybody. So, all right, let's see.
So looks like they can hear us both.
Yeah, and I can hear you now. And they're saying there's a small echo.
Small echo.
Let me see. I think I can get rid of. Let's see. I'm just afraid if I leave the studio on this one, but it should be fine. So everybody cross your fingers. Here we go. All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
No echo. All right. So I learned something, you guys. My apologies that I had to put you guys all through that, but at least I know in the future how to remedy it fast again. So my apologies. I know I kind of derailed this there a little bit, but we were right at the rings talking about the
coordinated plan.
Coordinated plan. All right. So back to you, John.
Why are they here? The general wanted them here. And I heard a coordinated plan. And I believe in this particular instance, it encapsulates the three things that we saw of General Flynn, his experience as national security advisor, what he does with, he's seen as a patriot, and actionable intelligence. So there's something actionable about that part of the dream, which is interesting. So then you say, why here? This is cool for us, but we're in a combat zone. Like, again, what are we doing playing boxing when there's literally a war going on outside? And so, and that's what happens sometimes in dreams. You just get a knowingness where you don't have any way of verifying it. You just know that there's a war going on. You didn't observe the war in the dream, but that's what happens. And so I put fights in a war. Literally, it's a play on words. There's fights. You know, like he fought in the war. You literally boxed in the middle of a war zone. He fought in the war. So it's a play on words. So fights in a war. So just like General Flynn, who went through a lot of persecution, a lot of different things, he had his own fight inside of the war against the globalists. So it's a play on words of the fights in a war or fought in a war. And he's a good example. And you've been through that, still in the midst of some of that. But so the idea of fights in a war. So, and then he repeats it again. General wanted them here. And I heard orders from the highest level. So if you know who the general is connected with and who he works with and all of that, you know that he's not a chump. He's not just some guy running around in military uniform talking about the glory days. He is, I believe, working towards a better America.
I agree completely.
Let's just say that. So, so then Alpha, you see two people, you know, the first one was the old partner from the police department. He was the first guy that betrayed you, but he got you into boxing.
Interesting, right?
So I heard first fight, which is super interesting because the betrayal starts here, but he's also the guy that taught you how to box. So this is again, when you think about this stuff, your mind is blown because you think about your history with this person. And there's probably a lot that you wish you could erase, but there is this redeemable side that, you know what, he was the guy that got me into boxing. And then you ended up in a much bigger fight, probably because of his betrayal and subsequent betrayals since. But that was the first fight. And then you realize that God has a coordinated plan for your life and nothing is by accident and everything is moving you towards an eventuality in a moment that you have where you're making an impact on the earth. And a lot of us live our lives either for comfort or thinking, well, I want to just, you know, get married, have kids, raise a family, have a nice home, have a cushy job for 20 years. If you look at Abraham Lincoln's life, and I'm so glad I studied him because he was a symbol in his dream, his life was a slow motion train wreck. Like he was literally hospitalized like 3 times with nervous breakdowns. His fiance died. He started 2 or 3 businesses. He went bankrupt every time. He ran for Congress because he was homeless. Because I'm literally like not going to eat if I don't win this election. That's why he ran for Congress. He's in Congress a year and somebody nominates him for the presidency. It was a joke. They wanted to distract against another guy they wanted to win the primary and this and that. And nobody ever thought on the Republican ticket that Lincoln would actually win the primary. And if they would have thought that, they never would have suggested, because here's what happens. He wins the primary. You would think the crowning moment of your life. He wins the primary and the South secedes. Between the time the election is over and the time he's inaugurated, half the nation quits the nation because he won. Like, I'm sorry, I know people believe Trump is controversial. Trump doesn't even hold a candle to how controversial Lincoln was. Like, not even in the same ballpark. Which is funny because the media tries to put down, oh, he's the most divisive and World War III and the worst thing that's ever happened in the history of the world, until they want to say the same exact stuff about somebody like Putin. And then it's the same talking points that he's alone, he's isolated, nobody's around him, he's losing his mind, he's going to start World War III, his fingers on the button. Like, guys, get new talking points. Like, say he's got syphilis or something more interesting than the same exact thing you said about the last guy. Like, come on, you know? But he had a 26% approval rating. I mean, he suspended the writ of habeas corpus. He set out a standing army. He sent out an army against the sitting legislature of Kansas. They surrounded the building while the legislature was meeting. Could you imagine this? In light of, people want to talk about how horrible January 6th was. Imagine if the president sends to a state capital an army to surround a building while they're voting on legislation. Could you imagine
They would
what the
love
media
that.
would do with this stuff?
Like,
this actually happened.
He's a dictator. He's a king.
He was called a dictator, a tyrant, and a despot by his own cabinet. Those are the guys that he brought with him to govern the country, right? And then there were the stalwarts and the conservatives of the Republican Party that were the two ends, the right and the left of the Republican side. Both of them absolutely hated him, but they were still Republicans. And then there were the Democrats, and the Democrats absolutely hated him, but they were still in the Union. And then there was the whole Confederacy that everybody wanted him dead. So, I mean, it was just absolutely incredible when you think about what that means and what it means in light of history. You start to look at things a little bit different. So the whole idea of, back to some of the stuff in the dream, the first fight, there was the betrayal. And, but this was the guy, the first guy the guy that you knew, your former partner from the police department, first betrayal, got you into boxing, literally your first fight. And then he's building the ring. He's over there trying to put the ring together. And what I heard was building a base or building a platform. There's a fight, and it may not have happened yet. It may still be coming in your life that is going to be so big that the world is going to see it, that it's going to be on a flashy platform, that it's going to be in a place, but it's going to impact what's going on in the middle of a war. It's going to be your opportunity to fight in the war, and the war will be related to what's happening in the Patriot versus whoever the other side is, the traitors or whatever you want to call them. I don't like labels, but that's where this is heading towards. So it's interesting because you're like, looks like it's time for me to get in shape. You say this to the guy that betrayed you, and you're like, and so what's absolutely fascinating about this. Now again, when you spend as much time with dreams as I do, you kind of go in slow motion and you start thinking about that. What possessed you to be in this Jeep with this black guy, pull up to this Quonset hut at the very edge of the base, to walk in, to realize it's in a hangar, to see two boxing rings, how beautifully they're laid out. You see your old coach, you see your old partner, you still got the black guy, angelic figure, whatever he was, with you, and then you see General Flynn, and your first thought was, this is about me. I got to get ready for a fight. Why would you think the fight would have anything to do with you? But it's fascinating that that's your first thought. Your first thought is, I got to get ready to fight. Maybe the general's going to box. Maybe your old partner's going to box. Maybe your old coach is. But it's interesting that you have the guy that got you into boxing and your old coach. And there's an angelic presence, and there's the general. Could the general be the new coach for a bigger fight? Interesting. In the middle of a war.
Very interesting, man.
There's 2 fights that are going to happen. So yeah, it's the juxtaposition of who you know there and who you recognize there are fascinating. Are just fascinating. But let me get back to, we're almost done with going through the symbols. And I know this is taking a long time, but I want you to get the nuances. So
I'm enjoying this, man. I'm wild. Seriously, brother. I'm wild right now.
Cool. Well,
and I'm reading the chat, you know, yeah, and the chat's loving it too. Chickaboom's like, I'm so loving this. Me too. Me too.
We get, I'm kind of a dream geek. So a lot of times we get bogged down with the details and people are like, dude, just tell us what it means. You're an hour and a half in. Like, what does the freaking thing mean? And I'm like, what's almost more important about understanding the dream is how we get there. Because the journey to understanding the dream is in itself supernatural. Because again, I didn't sit down and come up with my own thoughts on this. I heard stuff like the quote from, you want me on that wall, you need me on that wall. What's happening? There's a guy that's on trial, and it ends up being the general that's on trial. And so you look at the bigger context in light of Flynn being and a general sitting on the wall, and like you could go down those rabbit holes for days. Go back, watch the movie, go back and watch the movie about setting up the president, about General Flynn and that whole thing. Look at the juxtaposition between the general and that, and how they tried to make it look. And one was real. The general was a bad guy. The other one, I don't believe he was at all.
Well, it's especially the general in that movie is at Guantanamo Bay. I'm not even going to go there, everybody.
We're not going there, but I'm telling you, believe it or not, there is way more than we're going to get into. Some of it we actually can't talk about live on the air because, I just might mention a few things. But so you said, I think it's time for me to get in shape. I heard get ready for a fight, betrayal. Then I heard capital the show. And then I thought it was interesting that you see the boxing ring, you immediately know it's your fight. This is where I'm going to fight. And which I think is interesting. It's just like a knowingness. Like you already assumed. You walk in, you see 2 boxing rings. You're like, all right, I better get in shape. Who said you were boxing there? But you're just like, all right, okay, let's go, which is awesome. And then you said I was an amateur boxer. And what I heard was, turned pro. Because you went into the military and you're not an amateur anything there. You're a warrior. You're a paid warrior for our nation. And then you were in law enforcement. So you did the national level and then the regional level. And now you're a patriot. And so you're not an amateur nothing. You're fighting battles for real that have consequences, some on a bigger scale, some on a more regional scale, and then some on a whole country and the future of freedom in the world, I believe, kind of a scale. So in the other corner, you see Coach Diaz, your old boxing coach, right? And what I heard is you have good help. Now, I'm not always prompted to do this, but I was particularly prompted to look up the name meaning of Diaz. And Diaz means son of Diego. I think it's interesting. Sounds like San Diego, but it's son of Diego. And Diego means 2 things. It means teacher, and it means may God protect.
Wow. Wow, man. Oh my.
There's so much depth. So this guy who's known, who's produced boxers on a world level, world champion level, Coach Diaz, highly respected, highly honored man in the world of boxing. The last name, literally, like, again, you can't make this stuff up. Like, God used him specifically because he trains the best in the world. He was also your coach, but his name means teacher. He's a coach. May God protect. Like, son of, teacher, or coach, may God protect. So not only is it talking about what he's doing, son of Diego being a teacher, that means God protect, means literally he comes from a lineage of coaches or teachers that teach people how to protect themselves, but also rely on the protection of God in what they do. I'll tell you what, if there's two people that believe in God, it's a boxer getting in a ring against a formidable opponent, and it's a soldier going to war. And in this dream, you're both. You're both. You're a soldier in a war zone, and you're a boxer getting ready to go in a ring. So it's interesting. So you talk to him, hey, coach, looks like it's time to get in shape. So again, you have this, nobody's told you anything. You don't see your name on the card. Am I the main card, the undercard? I mean, you just know, all right, it's time. It's time for me. It's time to get ready. And you even tell the person that would be in your corner, it's time to get ready, right? Time to prepare. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't even look at you. He's turning a wrench in the corner of the ring. And here's what I heard. Your stage is being set by trusted friends. And then now you're thinking, can he even hear me? By the way, it's interesting that the sound went out because this happens in the dream. You're like, hello, can anybody, coach? It's time for me to get ready. He doesn't answer. Hey, partner, I guess I should get ready. He doesn't answer. The guy that introduced you to boxing, the guy that trained you as a boxer. Wow. Interesting people to have in the dream. So you're thinking, can he hear me? And what I hear is you're hidden or you're undercover. People are walking through and you're like, I feel like a ghost, not seen, invisible. And not seen, here's what that means. That means the platform that you've seen or been on and the level of notoriety or media or whatever that you've had to this point is absolutely nothing compared to what's coming. And it may involve a fight. Just saying. So now you leave the gym with the black guy.
That's one of those ones that's
yeah,
that's exciting and that's scary.
That's scary. It's scary, but it's exciting. And if you got people like General Flynn and your old boxing coach, these are the characters, these are the visuals in the dream. Like, imagine being a patriot going through a fight, but it was a fight that the whole world could see, but Flynn's in your corner. That's a whole different level of battle, but it's a whole different level of support too. And we know that God provides. You know, he doesn't send you into something without delivering you. He doesn't, he's going to give you the people that you need. And that's what the stage is being set by trusted friends, which means it's going to be a fair fight. Your coach is over there turning the wrench, making sure the ropes are tight. There's no loosey-goosey stuff. Nobody's going to trip and fall out of the ring. It's going to be set to go, and it's going to be fair, which I think is interesting. So you still got your guide with you. You leave the gym with the black guy, right? Shadowy figure. You walk to another area of the camp. Now you're talking about old combat memories. This is so fascinating. This is so cool. In the dream, you have a memory that's not real. You're like, this didn't happen to me, but in your dream, it's in your mind, this happened to me. So cool. It's like it's like a dream within a dream, right? So what I heard was real strategy. There's a strategy that's actionable intelligence in this dream that is being released that could probably help the Patriot movement. And it could definitely help you in your situation, but it's bigger than that. That I don't know that I'm going to share all of what I'm getting publicly, because then everybody knows the strategy. And so, unfortunately, I may hold back a little bit. I'm going to tell you when we get off, But just for the audience, please don't be mad at me. But a lot of times God will release a strategy that, again, is actionable. If God told you how to win your lawsuit against Department of Justice or whoever it is that's going after you, you don't want to get on YouTube or on Rumble and say that. Like, hello. And so that's a piece of the actionable intelligence.
The mics were, my headphones got muted. Man upstairs probably saying, hey, remember, you guys are crossing into a threshold here where be careful with what you share. Yeah. I'm listening.
It's crazy. So you're talking about an old combat memory that's not real, but the strategy is real. Every sniper kept taking a bunch. There was an enemy sniper that was taking a bunch of your guys down, which was real casualties. You're in a war with you're talking about a time when you were in a war with real casualties. Your job was to take him down. Here's what I heard, and I'm not going to say much beyond this. I heard counter-offensive and counter-terrorism. So again, if you guys remember, this was during one of the combat exchanges. The guy kind of makes you hover. He says, hey, run back outside and draw fire so I can shoot him. And then he's like, no, I'm just kidding. Like, don't do that. Like, and there's probably a handful of privates that would be, sir, yes, sir. Run, run. No, you're going to die. But the whole concept is draw fire for the kill shot. What's that movie with the two snipers? I think the one was Nazi and the other was Russian, or it was American and a Nazi. It was a World War II setting. And there's the one guy that every time he takes a shot, he says the Psalm, blessed be the Lord, my strength, who teaches my hands to war. And it's literally sniper against sniper. And at one point he takes a hat and he throws it up and boom, it's immediately shot, but it gives away that guy's position. And then he shoots him right through the sight of his gun.
Man, I can't put my thumb on that one.
Yeah, I forget what the name of the movie is, but it's another good movie to watch. But it's that whole idea of if you're in that kind of a battle, you don't expose yourself unless you have the option of taking somebody else out. So it's very, very strategic, a level of exposure, drawing fire. So then you talk about how this was in a publication, a guy in Afghanistan, platoon leader tells him to pop up to draw fire. And then he says, just kidding, dummy. And here's what I heard. I heard kidding, not kidding. Kind of like sorry, not sorry. Kidding, not kidding. Maybe part of a strategy, I'm just saying. And then you're referencing a story. And here's what I heard. I heard legal reference or precedent. Now, again, forgive me. I'm going to be intentionally vague. There's something here that's actionable for you. So then you're walking down a path, a road that's not paved, which means you're walking on with life. And it's a sunny, beautiful day. And I hear new day. It's interesting that you walk out of the boxing ring. You didn't fight in the dream, but you walk out of the dream and now you're like, the sun is shining, the birds are singing, it's like a Disney movie,
Now the interesting thing about this, John, it was like, if you could describe the perfect day or the perfect weather, like that's the way it was, like the temperature, the light from it's so hard to describe, but just think of your best day and it was better than that. Like it was everything from the light to the temperature. It was a perfect day. Like it stuck out a lot, man. It was nice.
Yeah. Well, what I heard is a new day. Like it's a new day for America kind of a thing. Like there's going to come a time when what we're all going through and what you've gone through more than most everybody is going to be worth something. And it's going to be a new day. You're not always going to fight this battle or this war. So you ready for the best part? This is mind blowing. This is going to gut punch you, man. So it's walking down a path, sun shining, new day. One of the guys says, hey man, what's your record? and I heard it's a victory inquiry. Nobody wants to know what your losses are. They want to know what your wins are, but they say, what is your record? And you say 3-1. And then you say, actually, my record legitimately is 2-1.
Well, what it was I didn't say 3-1. The guy, so the group of guys I'm walking with, someone answers 3-1.
Right.
And then another one goes along with this, 3-1. And then I'm the one that's like, I ain't 3-1 though, I'm 2-1.
Not 3-1, I'm 2-1. So 3-1 means something if you're a man of faith and believe in God. It's really interesting. You know, God is the 3-1. But when somebody else says 3-1 and you're like, no, my record is 2-1, your future victory is assumed.
I like that one. I could sleep easy with that. That one's better. that one's better than the other. Hey, pop up and draw fire, dummy.
Right? So I believe it's God telling you, whatever the fight is, you're going to win. Which is a whole heck of a lot easier to know on the front end. If you knew the day they broke your perimeter of your house and sent flashbang grenades in with your family, and if you knew all the hell you were going to go through, but you knew it was worth it, I was going to have an impact and I was going to win. The thing is when you're going through that, you don't know that. And when the finances run out, you don't know if you're going to get the next job. And when this happens, and when you're going through hardship, it always feels like it's going to be the thing that's going to end you, but it never is. But this, God is telling you, it's a God victory, 3-1, but your record is no longer 2-1. It's assumed, and it's after the battle. So this provides a dichotomy in the dream, in interpreting the dream. Because you have this conversation after leaving the Quonset hunt, you know it's a new day. The sun is shining. It's a beautiful day outside. It's like it's a new era. It feels like it's the dawning of a new age. And so it kind of implies, and then there's this discussion that implies the victory is already won. Like literally the battle is already over. Like you've already been in the ring and you've already fought. But if you back up a little bit, you're saying, okay, I need to get ready. I need to get ready. I need to get ready. You tell it to your old partner where your betrayal started, and you tell it to your boxing coach. I need to get ready. And so what I'm here to tell you is there's one of two eventualities related to the end of the stream. Either you've already fought the battle and you just haven't seen the victory yet, but it's imminent without nothing can stop the fact that you're going to win. Or there's a battle that is about to come that you feel nobody else told you need to get ready, by the way. You feel like you need to get ready. But there could be another battle that's coming, but your victory is already assumed. And I would say assured.
I'm pumped up, man. Let me tell you why it means so much to me, John. Because whatever battle God wants me to get in, I'm going to get in it. Even if I didn't know the outcome. You know, and I've shared this with, my family and my friends all the time, that this might cost me. Like, I always say on my shows, like, don't worry, God wins. So since God wins, we win. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that it's not going to be a bloody knuckle fight. The victory doesn't mean that it's going to be all sunshine and roses. And I've always understood, and I've told God, if my sacrifice is required, then just give me peace. I'll walk into the flames, but just give me peace. And he knows when I say peace, he knows what I mean by that. It doesn't mean take away my pain. I'll take my pain. I'll take other people's pain. When I say give me peace, what that translates into is I will do whatever you want me to do for you. Just let me know that my family is taken care of while I go through that. That's my piece. You know?
Yeah. It's incredible.
This is
well, this is just the symbols. We haven't even wrapped it up yet. So let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up, man.
Let's wrap it up. We've been on 2 hours. Thank you all for sticking with us. I know this is, but again, this process is when you treat dreams like intelligence and you don't blow them off, you want to know all the color, every little nuance. I'm telling you, I'm leaving a good 30% of this stuff on the table that we're not even talking about. There's way more, but it's not going to change the meaning of the dream. It's not going to change the outcome that your victory is assumed and assured. It's not going to change the old coach and potentially the new coach, Diaz versus Flynn, which is super interesting. We should somebody look up the name meaning of Flynn and put it in the comments if you would. But here's what I see in a soft terrain. Like, the battle is not the environment. Like, again, if you're going, if you're trying to take over a fortress that's hidden in the mountains, half the battle is just getting there. That's not the case here. You're in a soft terrain and a familiar setting. You see the dark fruit of what I hear, the wars and the war machine, because you're on a military base. And so you're seeing the dark fruit of, I love the military. I'm a veteran myself. I love the government. I love the let me say this. I love the institution of the United States of America. And I love what our forefathers set up to govern us as a people. Now, there's a lot of people in government that have made very, very bad decisions. And there's many of our institutions that have been compromised almost wholesale. There are good people I believe, in every single one of these institutions. But there are some people that happen to be in charge at particular moments in history that are doing very, very bad things, bad for the country, bad for the nation, bad for the Constitution, and bad for us as citizens. And there's a time when justice is coming and God is going to act and we're going to see some things. Part of the way that may go down, if history proves true, like in the Bible, is there may be fights that individuals or groups of people have against other individuals, good guys versus bad guys. When God wanted to secure the safety of the nation of Israel, David was the one that went out with the sword, with the stone in his sling, and took down Goliath. Somebody had to face that guy. Nobody wanted to face him. He sat there for 40 days or 50 days, yelling and cursing God and the armies of Israel, and everybody was terrified. And it took one guy that's like, look, I've killed a bear and a lion. If I can do that, I can take this chump down. Why are we letting this chump bad talk our God? And it was that one guy that said, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill your brothers. I'm going to take out your entire army. And so when that stone sunk into his forehead, it was one guy with a victory assured by the 3-in-1, by the God Almighty. And it's interesting. Getting some revelation here. So what did David say when he told Saul, hey, I want to go fight the giant? Saul's like, you're just a kid. He said, I've killed a bear and I've killed a lion, which means he had a record of 2 wins. And now he's going against a giant, right? So I think it's fascinating. 2-in-1 versus 3-in-1 is interesting, but the 3-in-1 represents God as the Godhead, the Trinity, the 3-in-1. So it was a God-powered stone that came out of his sling that sucked into the forehead of David and took him down. And then he went over and probably struggled with all of his might just to barely pick up the sword of Goliath and probably let it drop on his neck, which severed his head. And the first part of what he said came true. He said, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to cut off your head. And then I'm going to kill the other giants, your brothers. And I'm going to take out this army. So, as soon as they saw his head was off, the army scattered because of this one kid. They were gone. Like the battle was over. And then the rest of the time was pursuing and killing all the bad guys. It was literally like the war was over. One guy faced what seemed to be an insurmountable battle with the power of God, assured the victory of the nation. This happens. So certain elements in power have assumed a semi-established staging area. We could call this, people like the name deep state, whatever you want to call it. There's nefarious forces within probably all levels at this point of our federal government and our institutions that choose to do harm to the United States and to its people and to the future of our country, our liberties, our freedom. If this is new to you, you need to be watching AlphaWarrior a whole lot more. Most of you that are on the show, you already get this. It's already kind of like, duh, we get that we understand it. Here's part of the good news. They are preparing from old mindsets, old strategies, and old tactics. And what God is doing is he's releasing a new strategy in this dream. And we're not going to get into exactly what that is. But the whole idea of a measured response, the whole idea of, the whole Vietnam thing, progressive escalation, respond in kind. No, we don't want to respond in kind with the people that want to tear our country down. We want to go full Al Capone. I want them dead. I want them all dead. I want their houses burnt to the ground. I mean, and then add in there a little Jack Nicholson. You want me on that wall. You need me out. Like that. That's the kind of intensity that we want to. We don't want these guys to be quiet. We want them to be routed out of federal government, and we want them to be tried and prosecuted. And if the justice system sees fit, executed if need be. We don't wish the death of anybody, but we want justice and we need justice. And our country needs it to be able to move forward. And that's what this is about. There's a war going on that's way bigger than the setting that you're in. And there's a dark orchard, and there's something that's about to happen at the root where the retaining wall is, where Flynn is. Flynn sat on this wall, right? The Patriot movement, a lot of people in the Patriot movement have been censored and banned and arrested and all, lost income and all kinds of trials that they've been through. They've stood on the wall, but the wall gets to the root of the dark orchard. And that's the setting where you walk in, where the come up here, I want to show you something, like in Daniel, like in Revelation, the Black Marine says, come in, I want to show you. And you go into the largest Quonset hunt at the very edge of the base that now happens to be in an aircraft hangar. And you see there's dual fights. So there's not one fight, there's two. You assume instantly, I got to get ready, that one of the fights is going to be yours. You probably don't assume that I'm going to fight in both rings, because how can you? There's two fights going on, and why would you have two fights side by side if not two fights going on simultaneously? But the whole aircraft hangar, the side is open. It's beautiful optics. It's beautiful. It has this aesthetic appeal. There's American flags. There's red, white, and blue. There's a white canvas. So this is going to be televised. Which you probably, one of the things you didn't know about me is I used to be part owner of a boxing network. And so I've sat ringside at like Friday Night Fights with Showtime. And we, on Fight Time, which was the name of our channel, we would film the undercard, the first 7 fights. And then when it came to the 3 championship fights, we would shut our cameras off and Showtime would take it from there. But I sat right next to the Showtime guys. I've seen the setup of the ring. We've had the ring made with our logo, Fight Time, the big, spent a lot of money for the advertising. Like, no, all of that's involved in making that happen. They're putting the ring together, the whole 9 yards. So again, it's interesting that I have that experience, but I have that experience coming from somebody that televises fights in 188 countries around the world.
That is perfect divine intervention right there, man.
I've also been a cornerman once. I actually sponsored a boxer that, call it coincidence, haven't talked to the guy in a couple of months. I actually called him today and talked to him. Pro boxer. I sat in his corner once. It wasn't a long fight. Somebody got knocked out quick, but I was a sponsor and his cornerman. So I've never boxed, but I've had way more experience in the support and the televising of boxing events than a whole lot of people that I know. Just fun fact to know. Interesting that God puts this in the dream. Interesting that I saw when you said the rings were beautiful. That's a weird thing to say about typically blood-covered, stained boxing rings, right? So I just think it's super interesting that at the root level of the Dark Orchard is this wall. The former National Security Advisor, General Flynn, is on that wall. There's another guy that's also a talker and a speaker. We don't need to know who he is, but I bet there's another dream that will see similarities. The other thing we got to understand about intelligence is it's an ongoing discussion. You know, you don't give your wife a sticky note one time that says, "Hey, I love you," and then never say anything again to her. Like, it's, you know, that's great. That's one piece of information. Plus you get flowers, plus you make her dinner, plus the way that you treat her and the way that you treat the kids sends the message of how you feel about her and the life you want to create together. So when people get one dream, especially when it's a dream that's like really phenomenal like this, they're like, "Oh, that was amazing." I'm telling you, you're having dreams I have 2 to 6 dreams a night. Write them all down. I don't care if they're one word. I don't care if they're 5 numbers. I could tell you stories all day of 5 numbers that meant something in a dream, of one word that we unpack that to mean something in a dream. But this is a novel. This isn't even a movie. This is like a mini series. You know, there's so much happening here, but it's coming to the culmination where you're being led through this setting. What are you hearing about the setting? You're hearing about the Dark Orchard. You're hearing about the old equipment, right? You're hearing about the World War II Jeeps. You're hearing about the Vietnam War. As you're getting closer in proximity, notice how the age difference goes down. The first thing you say is World War II Jeeps. Okay, when was World War II? What, 90 years ago? Right? 80 years ago? Then you're in the Vietnam War. Okay, that's 50 years ago. Well, what is the age of these Quonset huts? I don't know, but by the time you get to the boxing rings, they're being built. They're brand new, which could mean it's future tense. You're seeing something that the fight hasn't happened because the rings aren't even put together yet. You still got your coach tweaking on the wrench, right? And you're setting up the aesthetics and the optics for this message to go way beyond whatever's going to happen in this Quonset hut inside an aircraft hangar at the edge of this remote base. The whole world is going to know about. And so it's a big fight. And you assume immediately, which I think you rightly do in the dream, that this fight may involve you. But you have the best people. The guy, even though he betrayed you, he was the guy that got you into boxing. He's there, which sends a historic precedence to what that means. And then you see, who else do you see? You see your coach, and you have General Flynn right outside. General Flynn you saw 2 guys outside and 2 guys inside. 2 people on the wall, 2 people related to you in boxing.
They were all pairs.
Interesting. Son of Diego, teacher, and may God protect. Like, I just love that. I just love that. Why are these here? The general wanted them here. You asked again, but why here? The general wanted them here. Interesting. So if there's, say, an event or a strategy, or you're part of a coordination or a facilitation of a larger thing that's happening, but General Flynn is the head of it, this isn't about you. It's not about your life. It's not about even people like you. It's about something that's way, way bigger. But it's interesting that you're like, this is my fight. I need to get ready. I need to prep. I need to train. But then there's the idea that it's going to go out to a much bigger audience, which is why the aesthetics, that's why the optics, but it's super cool that the age of the references of time go down as you go through the dream. So again, there's a lot here. Stage being set by trusted friends. You don't feel like you're seen. How many times in the midst, let me just ask you this, one man to another, in the midst of everything that you've went through in the last 2 or 3 years, how many times did you feel invisible? Like nobody understood what you were going through and like you were all alone?
More than a lot, man. A lot.
And the first person you ask, can you see me, basically, is what you say, is the guy that betrayed you. And you're like, bro, like, And that question is so much deeper, because can you see me goes to the level of identity, which, by the way, goes back to your other dream. When we start talking about your identity and who God's made you to be and the leader that you are and all these things, you know, it goes back to something that's a whole lot deeper than what you're going through now or even what you've been through. Can you see me? Do you understand who I am? Do you understand why I was created? Do you know who I am at my core? When push comes to shove, if we're in the foxhole together, do you understand how I care about my family and how I've wanted to keep them out of drama and provide for them and all these things? Not just who you are, but what you've been through, what you've experienced, how you've responded, and what your hopes and dreams are for you and yours for the future. When you're saying, am I seen? You want people in your corner that understand that. And the first guy didn't. And the second guy, you're not asking that to. What are you asking him? The second guy, you say, hey, coach, I guess it's time for me to get in shape. And he ignores you. He doesn't say anything or turn to look. It means one of two things. You assume he doesn't hear you. But it could also be that it's laughable what you're saying, that it's like, bro, you're already in shape. Like, it's like Mike Tyson in his prime looking at his coach. Should I go run 2 miles before the fight? Dude, you're there. All you got to get in the ring and knock this joker out in the first round, 12 seconds in. That's it. That's all that's left to do. So I think that's interesting. But you felt like a ghost because of these two circumstances. But it's right at that moment that I feel like God releases the strategy where you start talking about the memory that's not a memory. And it's really a story. And it's about drawing fire. And then the whole scene ends with your victory assumed and assured. You're going to fight in the war. There's a war going on for this nation, as we all know right now. You're going to fight, but it's not a fight that's going to put your life in danger. Boxing matches very rarely end in death. You might get your clock clean. You might get knocked out. You know, it's not saying it's not nothing, but it's not war. And so I think there's a big difference between the war going on outside and the display that's happening inside. It's for entertainment purposes. It's a show. Somebody recently said, I forget who, it's going to be like a movie. You're going to see things like a movie. It's going to be the best movie we've ever seen. But it's going to be like a movie. So what if there needs to be a display in terms of justice, and it's only a fight that you can fight, and it may be the very fight that you were born for, but you immediately see the ring and you recognize this is mine. And the dream closes with 3-1 versus 2-1. You don't even think you've won yet, and you've already won. You've already won, brother.
That's what I need to hear, something like that, man. And for the record, because people are probably curiosity, that's two wins by knockout and a loss by decision. Just to put it out there.
By knockout, of course.
2 by knockout. I'll tell you what, man. Wow. Real quick, I want to make sure we cover this. For those that are watching, and because obviously the comments, people have absolutely loved to hear what you've been saying, John. And people are like, well, Alpha, I don't want to wait weeks and weeks and weeks to hear John speak again. If people want to hear this kind of information, where do they find you, brother?
Well, and people have said, hey, can we send in dreams? Every Tuesday, we do what we call a live dreams. It's on Dream Life Decoded on YouTube. I do a lot of stuff on YouTube. And we have a show like this. I use StreamYard. And I say, who's got a short dream? And everybody in the comments jumps in, and we get 12 people in the back. And I'll be like, Okay, come on, Alpha Warrior. What's your dream? Now keep it short. This stream is way too long. There's no way we could do this. That's why we take a whole show and we're 2 hours and 20 minutes in unpacking this dream. But if it's like, hey, I had a dream, you can tell me the dream in 20 or 30 seconds. Come on, and we'll interpret the dream right there.
That is cool. That is cool.
And a lot of times I bring on other friends of mine, people that have been through my training, people that are part of my team, and they're super good too. And then a lot of times, and even if you don't have a dream, watch the show, because we tell people, like we did in the comments here, hey, somebody look up, what does Flynn mean? And Storm has arrived, says Flynn is Irish origin, meaning red or ruddy. And of course, I didn't ask for this, but thank you for putting this as well. Michael is the archangel of war. And Outlaw said, son of the red-haired one for Flynn. And so Ascending Proof said Flynn means Irish, means son of the red-haired one. It's interesting because when people talk about, I'm not crying, you are, Chickaboom. When people talk about the giants, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole if you haven't looked into the giants and the Nephilim and whatever. But if you start looking up giants, start with the giant of Kandahar. It's an actual thing. It was actual YouTube footage. Often giants were redheaded. So it's interesting the reference to David that we have, David and Goliath, but when we're talking about Flynn. But I think it's also super interesting that what Flynn means.
And I put the link in there so everybody can find it. So just so you guys know, all the links for all John's stuff is in the description on Rumble. But if you're in the live chat of Rumble, I just dropped the link if you want to go straight there and hit subscribe right away. Don't waste no time.
So the actionable intelligence is for you to know the biggest thing is the peace. You can run towards the fire or towards the battle all day long if you know you're going to win. That's what David had. David knew his God was greater than Goliath. Doesn't matter. There's a dream that I should share at some point. But I'll just tell you the highlights of this dream. And at some point I need to share it and unpack it like we did here. But I had a dream that I entered a battlefield and there were two sides. And I knew the sides were Trump or the Constitution. And I'm like, oh man, like what? I got to decide between the Constitution, which I swore an oath to, or President Trump. And I'm like, why has it got to be that choice? Like what? How is Trump against, but that was the choice. And so initially I took the side of the Constitution. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic, right? So I'm up at the foxhole near the front, and there's a massive giant that comes in and starts pulling people out of the foxholes on both sides and just throwing them like rag dolls and just killing all of these people. And I pull out a weapon. I won't tell you all the details. And I shoot the giant, and the giant goes down. And then I run over to the other side. And now I'm on Trump's side. And I believe, I'll just give you this much. I believe the giant was the media. And the media was lying to both sides and setting up this war of division where you're either for justice and against Trump, or you're for Trump and against the Constitution. And it was all a lie. But there's so much depth in that dream. But it's just, it's fascinating because it's another battle dream. It's another wartime dream. But in the midst of a battle, in the midst of a war that's going on, you're going to be guided to another battle. You're going to have support. You're going to have friends. But God is letting you know the two people that you say, I should get ready. Dude, this is going to preach. The two people that you say, I should get ready, are the people that got you ready. The first fight taught you how to box, got you into boxing, and your first betrayal. And then your coach. Now, who does he coach? Does he coach losers? No, he coaches world champions. Interesting. And that may be why those people didn't respond and say, oh, you need to get ready. You are ready. It's the implication that your question is null and void when you think about it. You've been through betrayal. You've been through fights. You've been through incredible amount of stuff that nobody ever wants to go through. But you've been through it, and you're still here, and you're still standing. And I would wager, you would probably even say you're stronger for it. You're better for it. Your life is more impactful because of the things that you went through than if you were just still a police officer or whatever. Not that that's not a high calling, because it is. But your life is going to have way more impact because of the battles that you did not choose, that chose you, but you won anyway. And that's the last piece of actionable intelligence in the dream, is that God is releasing a strategy for you where you will win. And I believe, since the other two were by knockout, that it will be by knockout. And it will be a God-sized punch. And it will be with the Almighty on your side. And I don't say that to just say, well, God is on everybody's side. No. I'm saying the 3-in-1 means something. The fact that you have a dark angel with you, the fact that you see Michael Flynn, the archangel of war, right? The son of the red-haired one, the fiery one. If you look at when they describe God in Revelation and they talk about Jesus coming back as the warrior, what, the tattoo on his thigh and what, his eyes of fire. And I'm telling you, it's interesting. I'm not juxtaposing Mike Flynn to Jesus. I'm just saying there are some similarities between what his name means, particularly Michael R.J., Angel of War, and even Flynn, just like there was for Diaz, son of, teacher, and God protects. May God protect.
Ain't by chance, man.
Ain't by chance.
It ain't by chance. I'll tell you what, John, I'm definitely wanting to hear the other side. Listen, you guys in the audience, the numbers have grown from when the show started. So not only have you guys stuck around, but you invited more people. So I'm very thankful for that. You guys pray. Tell God you want to know what it is that he wants you to know, and you'll hear it. And like I said, we have a man like John available to us. Don't miss out on those opportunities. Capitalize on it. You have the links. Go and subscribe. John, I'll give you the last word, and then we will say goodnight, and everybody have a good weekend.
Well, it's such a privilege to have your trust, and the fact that you would come on and say, hey man, I want to know your thoughts on this stream. I really appreciate that, because I honor who you are, the leader that you are, the moment of history that you're in. I know it seems rough and tough, but I'm telling you, history is going to remember Alpha Warrior. People are going to know you're not going to go quietly into the night. And even the dream shows that you're going to be victorious in battle, in a fight, right? It may be a fight. Now, the other thing about boxing too is it's not war. It's a personal battle that you're in the ring alone against an opponent. You can have people cheering you on, people that trained you and people that help you, but it's you. It's not your coach. It's you. So I think that more aptly describes the setting. If you're at war, you're going with everybody, right? You take now all your friends and we're charging the hill, but that you're in a war, but in this war, military base, aircraft hangar, Quonset hut are two boxing rings. And you know that this is the battle this is the fight in a war, fought in the war that I was born for. And I would just say, if this touched you at all, praise God. Again, these aren't my thoughts. One of the things that Joseph and Daniel said in scripture, and I say it all the time, is the interpretation comes from him. I didn't make this up. I couldn't conjure up this stuff if I wanted to. There's no way that it just unfolds. If this really interests you, we have a program where we teach people how to do this. We call it the Spiritual Intelligence Mentorship, because our goal is to be able to have people in place when the time is right, let's just say, that can advise everybody from the President of the United States to high-level military leaders with actionable intelligence, like the strategy that I'm going to share with Alpha that is in this dream for him, and some of the things related to his fight personally. We've already done some of that. We want to do more of that. We need an army of people. We have former Green Berets, former law enforcement. We've had federal judges even interested in being in our program, people that have ran for Congress or assisted those that have run for Congress, people that have advised all kinds of people. It doesn't matter. If you have an interest in this, or if dreams are interesting and spiritual intelligence at this level is interesting to you, check out spiritualintel.com. You can find me at Dream Life Decoded on YouTube. I'm also on Twitter. I'm tiny little presence. I've started a presence on Rumble because of the AlphaWarrior Show. But YouTube is probably mainly where we're at. And then the website, spiritualintel.com. I also have dreamlifedecoded.com. And again, if you have a dream, particularly if you have a dream where you think it's national level important, if it's about your dog throwing up and your girlfriend, talking to the cat, it may not be national level important, but if it's about Trump, or if it's about Biden or Obama or Russia and China and Ukraine, all these things, and you're like, man, I feel like this dream is important and I don't know what to do with it, but I want to get it to a team of people that will do something with it. Even if I don't hear back, they will look at this, and if there's intel in it that needs to be released to somebody, they'll take care of it. You can send us dreams at dreamlifedecoded.com, dreamlifedecoded@gmail.com. If you have a short dream that you want to get interpreted, please join us for live dreams on Tuesday nights at 6 Eastern, 5 Central. And we're on for 2 hours where we just do this, but we do it one after another. They're usually 5 to 20 minute conversations, and we want to give people the time, but the goal is to be able to have 12 to 20 people on a night that get an answer for their dream. And it's so cool. It's cool to do this one because you get to do a deep dive and really see, ripping the meat off the bone. But it's also fun to see one after another, after another, after another. Sometimes kids come on. Sometimes it's just a whole wide variety of things that happen. So thanks again for the honor and the privilege of sharing, what I'm hearing from God for you in this dream, and for sharing me with your audience. I'm always humbled to be on your show, and I love it and I appreciate it, man.
The honor is mine, and I know I speak for the audience with that one too, John. Brother, don't stop what you're doing, and you're in a lot of prayers because you're allowing people to understand this gift that is just right here and here. You just gotta listen. You just gotta listen. With that, you guys, I will see you guys all Monday. 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. As always, you guys, God bless. This is the AlphaWarrior Show. First in, last out. See you guys next time.